Do you ever receive a blessing, settle into comfort, and then slowly forget where it all came from? Notice this, gratitude is not automatic, it has to be trained, and in Deuteronomy chapter 26 we're going to unpack Firstfruits, covenant confession, and the tithes that protect the vulnerable, and I will give you one immediate action to turn provision into praise this week in this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. Okay, so Deuteronomy chapter 26 brings the covenant life into worship and memory. So Israel is told to bring the first fruits of the land before the Lord, to recite a historical confession that remembers slavery and deliverance, and to give a tithe every third year for Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows. And the chapter shows that gratitude is public, that memory is theological, and that generosity is a part of covenant worship. Okay, so we're going to read the first 11 verses, so 1 to 11. Focus here is going to be on the first fruits and the confession of deliverance. And my engagement question for you to stay focused is, why does God want the first produce, not just a thank you afterwards? Verse 1. When you have come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess, and you possess it and settle in it, you shall take some of the first of all the fruit of the ground which you harvest from the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to the place that the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name. You shall go to the priest who is in office at that time and say to him, Today I declare to the Lord your God that I have come into the land that the Lord swore to our ancestors to give us. When the priest takes the basket from your hand and sets it down before the altar of the Lord your God, you shall make this response before the Lord your God. A wandering Aramean was my ancestor. He went down into Egypt and lived there as an alien, few in number, and there he became a great nation, mighty and populous. When the Egyptians treated us harshly and afflicted us by imposing hard labor on us, we cried to the Lord, the God of our ancestors. The Lord heard our voice and saw our affliction, our toil, and our oppression. The Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with a terrifying display of power, and with signs and wonders, and he brought us into this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So now I bring the first of the fruit of the ground that you, O Lord, have given me. You shall set it down before the Lord your God, and bow down before the Lord your God. Then you, together with the Levites and the aliens who reside among you, shall celebrate with all the bounty that the Lord your God has given to you and to your house. Alright, biblical unlock number 1. Why does God care about first fruits instead of just the leftovers? Because first fruits train the heart to say, God comes before my security. The offering, in this case, is not a mere donation. It is a confession that the land, the harvest, and the future all belong to him. The spoken story matters too. Israel is told again to remember slavery in Egypt and God's mighty rescue, so that abundance should never rewrite history. So even Augustine would treat a gratitude as the soul's right response to grace. Remember what you were, and you will better worship what God has done. So that is the important characteristic to help us stay humble. You have been evil, okay? You were an evil person in the sight of the Lord, yet God had mercy on you and turned you into a new creation, renewed your heart, mind, and soul. And this is the important characteristic to remember, to help you stay humble. Remember who you were before Christ, and remember that the only reason you are what you are right now is because of Christ. Okay, I'm going to read the next 3 verses 12 to 15. This is going to be concerning tithes for Levites and the vulnerable, and my engagement question for you to stay focused is, why is generosity built into the calendar instead of left to our emotions and ever-changing moods? So, let's read verse 12. When you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce in the 3rd year, which is the year of the tithe, giving it to the Levites, the aliens, the orphans, and the widows, so that they may eat their fill within their towns. Then you shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the sacred portion from the house, and I have given it to the Levites, the resident aliens, the orphans, and the widows, in accordance with your entire commandment that you have commanded me. I have neither transgressed nor forgotten any of your commandments. I have not eaten of it whilst in mourning. I have not removed any of it whilst I was unclean, and I have not offered any of it to the dead. I have obeyed the Lord my God, doing just as you commanded me. Look down from your holy habitation, from heaven, and bless your people Israel, and the ground that you have given us, as you swore to our ancestors, a land flowing with milk and honey. Why is the tithe tied to the needy and the Levites? I think the answer to this question is that worship and welfare, they both belong together. And the tithe is not just support for religious workers, it is a covenant mechanism. It ensures that the land's blessing reaches those without land, and God builds mercy into the economy so that the poor are not depending on generosity as a personality trait, but rather on an ordered pattern of care. And in fact, this is something that Jesus Christ speaks about when he discusses what you have been given, right? What are you doing with that which you have been given? Are you using it for the glory of God? Are you using it to enact God's kingdom here on earth? Or are we just sort of taking for granted the things that we have, the provision that we have, the wealth that we have, the traits, the discipline, all of these things? We need to ask ourselves, we have been given this for a purpose. We have people in our lives for a purpose. We're interacting with these people. And if we are not using our resources to help further the kingdom of heaven here on earth, then you have to ask us, what exactly are we doing? And John Chrysostom, early church father, he said, wealth is given for service, not for hoarding. So we need to be very clear about what we're using our wealth for. Okay, section of the chapter is verses 16 to 19. We're going to have the covenant declaration here. You are my people. Very important, which is the concluding exhortation of this chapter. And my question for you to stay focused is, what does it mean for obedience to be a mutual pledge, right? Not just a rule. The Lord your God is commanding you to observe these statutes and ordinances, so observe them diligently with all your heart and with all your soul. Today you have obtained the Lord's agreement to be your God and for you to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, and his ordinances, and to obey him. Today the Lord has obtained your agreement to be his treasured people, as he promised you, and to keep all his commandments, for him to set you high above all nations that he has made, in praise and in fame and in honor, and for you to be a people holy to the Lord your God, as he promised. Alright, biblical unlock number 3. Why does the chapter end like a vow between God and Israel? Because covenant life is mutual. God's people are not merely told what to do. They are declared to be a treasured people, and they are called to live as such. Obedience is the shape of belonging. The chapter closes by linking holiness, praise, and public distinction. God is forming a people whose life makes him visible. How does your life here on earth make the Lord, the God of Israel, the God of everyone else? How does your life make him visible to everyone? I once saw the idea that your life should be like a 45-degree mirror. Well, what does that mean? It means when people look at you, they should be reminded of the one above. Like in the same way, 45-degree mirror will reflect light upwards. So if your life is God's gift to you, what you do with it is your gift to God. And what we can notice as well about the entire biblical narrative, the fact that the Israelites were deep in bondage, in slavery, in Egypt, right? And afterwards, after the Lord miraculously saves them, that is when they're able to finally break free from the shackles and proclaim God to be their one true God and profess this to all the nations. But your Christian life, in the same sense, should be like that movement from slavery to divine likeness. That is, we're moving away from the slavery and bondage of sin. We're breaking free of these shackles so that we can love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind. So the covenant identity is meant to show up in our everyday conduct, to keep our commandments, because the Lord has obtained your agreement to be his treasured people as he promised you. God doesn't fall back on his promises, even though we do every single day, every single second of every single day. So set him, right? He is for him to set you high above all nations that he has made in praise and in fame and in honor, and for you to be a people holy to the Lord your God as he promised. Okay, let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. So what do we see in this chapter? Deuteronomy chapter 26 turns blessing into worship and memory into confession. And in Christ, this becomes even fuller. Why? Because Christ is the first fruits of the new creation, the one in whom gratitude, sacrifice, and provision, they all find their center in Jesus Christ. The Christian life does not begin with taking, but with receiving and then returning praise, service, and generosity to God. The first fruits then become a pattern of living, right? Give God the first, and your whole life will lean to worship. We read this in James chapter 1, verse 17. Every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Every generous act of giving with every perfect gift, every is from above. And this is something that we need to remember, right? The idea is we need to turn our eyes upward. Blessing is not self-made, and gratitude is not an optional practice. Okay, how can we apply this chapter in our everyday life? Well, first and foremost, before spending on yourself, before thinking self-centeredly, right? I want you to give the first of whatever it is to God. Whether that be the first hour, the first the payment, right? The first bit of energy, right? Give it to God or to someone in need, and make it deliberate, okay? And the second thing is, I want you to remember your story of deliverance, right? Write out one short story, how God rescued you, provided for you, carried you, and remember to thank God for the present provision that you're tempted to take for granted. In doing this, we're not only being grateful, we're not only providing, but we're also remembering that everything we have is a received blessing. And when we do that, we tend to be more humble as a result. It's a natural outpouring of grace that God has given us, so we have no need to boast. Alright, well that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. We learnt that first fruits train the heart to honor God before security, the confession of deliverance keeps blessing from becoming forgetfulness, the tithe is worship that becomes welfare for Levite and the vulnerable, covenant identity is spoken and not assumed, God declares a people and calls them to live accordingly, and that gratitude, memory, and generosity, they all belong together in a healthy covenant life. Next time we're going to move from gratitude and confession to the covenantal warnings and blessings in Deuteronomy chapter 27. We're going to unpack the stories, the altar, the curses, and why public memory has to be built into the land itself. You don't want to miss it. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate the show and follow. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.